The acrid stench of ozone hung thick in the artificial air, mingling with the synthetic tang of sweat. Commander Blake Cross, a hardened space pirate with a reputation as ruthless as the asteroid belts he prowled, ducked beneath a low-hanging swirl of digital vapor. Around him, the dreamscape battlefield pulsed with the chaotic rhythm of manipulated minds and alien subterfuge. "Cross, they're coming in from the left," bellowed his second-in-command, a wiry youth named Jax with eyes too old for his years. Cross didn't need the warning. He could feel the encroaching presence like a cold knife sliding along his spine. The Zephyr aliens were nothing if not persistent, their honeyed voices offering the sweet release of dreams to any human foolish enough to listen. The battlefield was a twisted labyrinth of shifting realities, a testament to Zephyr mastery over the subconscious. Neon pathways blinked in and out of existence, luring the unwary deeper into the void. But Cross had long since fortified his mind against their siren call. His addiction, like every human's in this stolen dreamscape, was not to their illusions but to the raw thrill of survival itself. With a practiced flick of his wrist, Cross activated his neural disruptor, a device of human ingenuity that spat defiance in the face of alien superiority. The blast tore through the dreamscape, shredding the Zephyr constructs into pixelated haze. But even as they dissolved, a new wave surged forth, more tenacious than the last. "Keep moving," Cross barked, leading his crew through a corridor of flickering geometries. The Zephyr had grown adept at exploiting human desires, weaving false paradises that ensnared even the strongest of wills. But they had underestimated humanity's capacity for adaptation, for turning addiction into weaponry. As the Zephyr descended, their whispers curled around Cross like silk, promising peace, pleasure, power. A lesser man might have faltered, but Cross only grinned beneath the harsh light of unmaking. He could see it now, the flaw in their design, the overlooked thread that would unravel their tapestry of control. "Jax, ready the pulse," he commanded, his voice a steady anchor amidst the chaos. His crew moved with synchronized precision, well-versed in the dance of defiance. The Zephyr, too confident in their dominion, had left themselves vulnerable. In their arrogance, they believed the dreamscape unassailable, their grip on human minds unbreakable. But as the pulse wave cascaded through the ether, Cross felt the shift, a tremor of uncertainty that told him they had misjudged humanity yet again. As the dreamscape flickered and wavered, the alien hold began to fracture, revealing glimpses of the cold metal reality beneath. Cross pushed forward, heart pounding, as he realized the true battle was only just beginning. The stench of burnt circuitry and ozone hung thick in the air as Captain Jack's irons stumbled through the narrow corridors of the Black Comet Asterisk, the battered freighter that had been his home for the past decade. Each step he took sent a shiver of pain through his battered body, the recent skirmish leaving him with a constellation of bruises and a gash across his brow that leaked blood into his left eye. He wiped it away with the back of his hand, smearing the crimson streak across his cheek. The ship groaned beneath him, protesting the damage from the last firefight. "We'll be lucky if she holds together another hour," Jax muttered, punching the wall panel to close the bulkhead behind him. The door sealed with a reluctant hiss, and he leaned heavily against the cold metal, catching his breath. "Cap'n," a voice crackled through the intercom, tinny and fraught with urgency. It was Mira, his second-in-command and the closest thing to family he had left. "The main drive's gone critical. We need to vent the plasma or we're going to blow." Jax pushed off the wall, forcing his legs to carry him forward. "I'm on it," he said, the words a promise as much to himself as to her. The drive room was 4 decks down, a labyrinthine journey through the ship's battered innards. He passed the crew quarters, or what was left of them after the last boarding attempt by the Coalition Marines. Doors hung ajar, revealing the chaos within, personal effects scattered, walls scarred by gunfire, and the ever-present reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. He skidded into the drive room, greeted by a cacophony of alarms and the acrid scent of overheating machinery. The reactor core pulsed with an angry red glow, the containment fields barely holding the raging plasma in check. Mira was already there, her dark hair matted with sweat, her hands a blur as she manipulated the control interfaces. "Jax, we can't sustain this," she said without looking up, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If we don't bend now, we'll be space dust." Jax nodded, moving to her side. "Initiate the emergency bypass protocols. I'll handle the manual override. But, Jax, trust me, Mira." There was no time for argument. He dove beneath the console, wrenching open the access panel to reveal the tangle of wires and conduits that defined the ship's lifeblood. His fingers worked instinctively, bypassing damaged circuits, rerouting power through secondary systems. Sweat dripped down his face, mingling with the blood from his wound. The ship shuddered around them as Mira activated the bypass. "Pressure's stabilizing," she called, hope threading her voice. "But it's temporary. We need a safe port to make permanent repairs." Jax knew that finding a refuge was easier said than done. They were deep in Coalition-controlled space, every outpost and station a potential threat. He had led them into this mess, chasing a lead on a lost trove of alien tech that promised enough wealth to buy their freedom and more. But the Coalition had caught wind, and now the Black Comet was a target, marked for destruction. "We'll head for the asteroid belt," Jax said, sealing the access panel and wiping his hands on his scorched trousers. "There's a mining colony there, run by smugglers. They owe me a favor." Mira nodded, trusting his judgment. "I'll plot a course, but we need to avoid patrol routes. Set it on silent running. We'll drift if we have to." He left her to the task, his mind already racing ahead. Every decision now carried the weight of their survival, and he couldn't afford to falter. The Coalition's reach was vast, their ships faster and more heavily armed. The only advantage the Black Comet had was its crew's tenacity and the vastness of space itself. The bridge, when he reached it, was a scene of controlled chaos. The rest of the crew were at their stations, their faces etched with a grim determination. Rook, the ship's pilot, looked up from the helm, his cybernetic eye whirring softly as it adjusted focus. "Got us a route, Captain," Rook said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "But it's tight. We slip up, and we'll be a picnic for the first patrol that spots us." "We won't slip," Jax replied, clapping a hand on Rook's shoulder. "We've come through worse," Rook grunted, a sound that could have been agreement or skepticism. "If you say so." The ship lurched as they broke free from their current trajectory, the stars shifting in the viewport as Rook adjusted their course. Jax settled into the captain's chair, the worn leather molding to his form like an old friend. He tapped the comms panel, opening a channel to the crew. "Listen up, everyone. We're heading for the belt. It's not going to be easy, but we stick to the plan, and we'll pull through." A chorus of acknowledgments crackled back, the crew's faith a slender thread binding them together. They had been through hell and back under his command, each of them with their own reasons for defying the Coalition, and he wasn't about to let them down. The Black Comet slipped into the shadow of a passing asteroid, her engines purring at minimal output. The silence was unnerving, the absence of the usual hum leaving only the creaking of metal and the distant thrum of the failing reactor. As the minutes ticked by, tension coiled tighter in Jax's gut. They were close to the belt now, but the Coalition's net was tightening. He could feel it, a predator's breath hot on their necks. "Rook, status update," Jax barked, his eyes scanning the monitors for any sign of pursuit. "Clear so far," Rook replied, though his fingers danced nervously over the controls. "But there's activity on the long-range scanners. Looks like a patrol might be vectoring in." "How long?" 10 minutes, maybe less. Jax swore under his breath. "Mira, any way to boost our speed without lighting us up like a flare?" "Not without risking another reactor meltdown," she replied, her voice tight with frustration. "Then we need a distraction," he said, a plan forming in the back of his mind. "Rook, prep the decoy drones. We'll send them on a wild goose chase." Rook nodded, already working the controls. "Decoys armed and ready." On your mark. The ship lurched again as they released the drones, tiny specks against the void, programmed to mimic the black comet's signature and scatter in different directions. It was a gamble, but one they had to take. Now we wait, Jack said, settling back into his chair. He hated this part, the helplessness of it, but there was nothing more to be done. They were a rabbit in a field of hawks, praying to go unnoticed. The minutes dragged by, each one an eternity. Jax's mind flickered back to the lead that had brought them here, the whispers of an ancient alien cache buried beneath the sands of a forgotten world. It had seemed too good to be true, a chance to strike back against the Coalition, to turn the tide of years spent on the run. But now, with the noose tightening, doubt gnawed at him. Movement, Rook said suddenly, snapping Jax back to the present. They're going for the decoys. A collective sigh of relief swept through the bridge. Good work, Rook, Jack said, allowing himself a small smile. But the moment was short-lived. Incoming transmission, Mira announced, her fingers flying over the console. It's encrypted Coalition code. Patch it through, Jax ordered, his heart sinking. He had a bad feeling about this. The screen flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of a Coalition officer, her uniform crisp and eyes cold as the vacuum outside. Captain Jax Irons, she said, her voice cutting through the static with icy precision. This is Commander Alara Voss of the Coalition Navy. You are ordered to stand down and prepare to be boarded. Jax leaned forward, his expression hardened. Commander Voss, to what do we owe the pleasure? Her lips curled into a thin smile, devoid of warmth. You are in possession of classified Coalition property. Surrender it, and your lives may be spared. Jax's mind raced. She was bluffing, had to be. There was no way she could know what they had, or didn't have. I'm afraid you're mistaken, Commander, he replied, feigning ignorance. We're just a humble freighter, trying to make our way in the galaxy. Spare me the theatrics, Captain, Voss snapped. Our sensors detected energy signatures consistent with ancient alien technology on your ship. You will comply, or be destroyed. Mira shot him a worried glance, and Jax felt the weight of his crew's lives pressing down on him. Commander Voss, even if I wanted to comply, we're barely holding together. You fire on us, and you'll destroy whatever you think we have. Voss's eyes narrowed, calculating. Then allow me to offer you a deal. Surrender the technology and join us. The Coalition rewards loyalty. Jax's laugh was sharp, cutting through the tension. Loyalty? You mean servitude. No thanks, Commander. We've seen what your reward looks like. Voss's expression hardened. Very well, Captain. You leave me no choice. Prepare for your end. The screen went dark, and Jax turned to his crew. Brace for evasive maneuvers. They're coming. The black comet shuddered as Rook threw it into a sharp dive, the stars blurring into streaks as they accelerated. Jax gripped the armrests, his mind a maelstrom of thoughts and plans. They were outgunned and outmatched, but he refused to give up. Mira, status on the reactor? He called over the chaos. Unstable, she replied, but it'll hold. Just. Jax nodded, his mind racing. There had to be a way out, a way to turn the tables. Rook, head for the asteroid field. We can use it for cover. The ship jinked and rolled, the crew holding on as they plunged into the dense field of tumbling rocks and debris. It was a dangerous maneuver, but their only chance. The Coalition ships were right behind them, their sleek forms cutting through the asteroid field with deadly grace. Jax watched the sensors, his mind a blur of calculations. They needed an edge, something to tip the scales. Rook, can you get us closer to that big one? Jax pointed at an enormous asteroid, its surface pitted and scarred. You're crazy, Captain, Rook replied, a grin tugging at his lips. But I like it. The black comet veered sharply, skimming the surface of the massive rock. Jax's plan was risky, but desperate times demanded desperate measures. Mira, prepare to detonate the plasma vent. We'll use the explosion to mask our escape. Understood, she replied, her fingers flying over the controls. The Coalition ships closed in, their weapons charging for the kill. Jax's heart pounded in his chest, every second stretching into eternity. "Now, Mira," he shouted. The explosion ripped through space, a blinding flash of light and heat that consumed the asteroid, sending debris and shrapnel hurtling in all directions. The black comet bucked and rolled, the shockwave propelling them away from the pursuing ships. In the chaos, Jax saw his chance. "Rook, punch it, get us clear." The engines roared to life, the ships surging forward as they made their escape. The coalition ships, caught off guard, struggled to regain their bearings amidst the devastation. As the black comet slipped into the shadows of the asteroid belt, Jax allowed himself a moment of hope. They had survived another day, but the threat loomed ever larger. "Mira, status report," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "We're clear," she replied, relief evident in her tone. "For now," Jax nodded, knowing their respite was temporary. The coalition wouldn't stop, and Commander Voss was relentless. But as long as he drew breath, he'd fight to keep his crew safe, to carve out a future where they could be free. The stars stretched out before them, an endless sea of possibilities and dangers. And Jax Irons, battered but unbroken, was ready to meet whatever came next. The starship Black Mariah drifted silently through the void, its hull almost lost against the deep abyss of space. Captain Silas, Viper. Kane sat in the captain's chair, the weight of the universe pressing down on him. His crew bustled around him, a ragtag group of misfits and renegades, each with their own haunted pasts and aspirations as shattered as the worlds they'd left behind. The alien cartel that had ensnared humanity in a stranglehold of addiction was more insidious than any of them had realized. The substance, known only as Luma, was a bioluminescent algae native to the oceans of Norelia Prime. It had a euphoric effect on the human mind, elevating senses and expanding perceptions, but it was also incredibly addictive, and withdrawal was often fatal. The cartel, an interstellar consortium of the reptilian Vorik and the telepathic Zern, had exploited humanity's weaknesses masterfully. They had infiltrated the underbelly of human society, spreading Luma through every port, every colony, until humanity's productivity and independence were choked under the weight of its craving. It was a perfect scheme. The Vorik and Zern had no taste for Luma themselves, and thus were immune to its allure. Humans, however, were susceptible, and now they were a species on the brink of servitude, trapped in the throes of an alien addiction they could not control. Silas Kane knew they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. The cartel's reach extended far beyond what any terrestrial faction could counter. They had the resources, the technology, and the ruthlessness to maintain their grip. And yet, as he gazed out the viewports at the distant stars, a flicker of defiance still burned within him. "Captain," a voice interrupted his thoughts, pulling him back to the present. It was Jules, the ship's comms officer, her wiry frame hunched over the console, her fingers tapping a rhythm on the keys. "We've intercepted a transmission. It's in Vorik code, but I think it's something big." Silas pushed himself upright, a grim determination settling over his features. "Let's hear it." Jules patched the message through, and a guttural series of clicks and hisses filled the room. The ship's translation matrix struggled with the syntax, but slowly the message unraveled into a string of words that made Silas's blood run cold. "The human's resistance is faltering. Increase Luma distribution by 20%. Reinforcements are en route to suppress any coordinated uprisings." Silas swore under his breath. "They're tightening the noose." Nero, the ship's engineer, looked up from his station, his face smudged with oil and sweat. "We can't keep playing cat and mouse with these bastards. We're running low on supplies, and the crew's getting restless. If we don't make a move soon, we're sitting ducks." "He's right, Cap," said Mira, the ship's medic, her voice edged with worry. "Morale's slipping. People are scared. We can't keep running forever." Silas nodded, acknowledging their words. "We have to find a way to hit them where it hurts. We need information, something we can use to turn the tables." "There's one place we might be able to find what we need," said Jules, her eyes flickering with a mix of fear and determination. The Narration Archive. It's a central hub of intelligence for the cartel. If we could infiltrate it, we might uncover their entire operation. Silas considered the suggestion, his mind racing. The Narration Archive was heavily fortified, a fortress of data nestled in the heart of cartel territory. It was a suicide mission, but it might be their only shot. "We'll need a plan," he said finally, a steely resolve in his voice. "And a damn good one at that." The crew set to work, each of them driven by desperation and a flicker of hope. They pored over star charts and schematics, devising a plan that was equal parts audacity and madness. As they worked, the tension aboard the Black Maria was palpable, the weight of their mission hanging over them like a storm cloud. In the midst of it all, Silas found himself drawn to Mira, the ship's medic. She was a pillar of strength, her compassion and determination a beacon in the darkness. They had a history, a tangled web of unspoken words and shared glances, and in the quiet moments between planning and execution, they sought solace in each other's presence. "Mira," Silas said softly, as they stood together in the dimly lit galley, the hum of the ship a constant backdrop. "What do you think our chances are?" She met his gaze, her eyes steady and unwavering. "I think they're slim. But if we don't fight back, then we're already lost." He nodded, grateful for her honesty. "I don't want to drag you into this if you're not ready." Mira shook her head, her expression firm. "I'm with you, Silas. All the way, whatever it takes." Their hands brushed, a fleeting connection that spoke volumes. In that moment, amidst the uncertainty and danger, they found a shared resolve that fortified their spirits. As the Black Maria approached Norelia Prime, the crew steeled themselves for the mission ahead. The star system was a web of cartel patrols and defenses, each one a potential death sentence for their ragtag crew. Yet, the grim determination that had brought them this far refused to waver. The approach was tense, each second stretching into eternity as they navigated the treacherous expanse. Nero worked tirelessly in engineering, coaxing every last ounce of power from the ship's engines, while Jules juggled a constant stream of data, weaving the Black Maria through gaps in the enemy's net. As they neared the archive, the ship's sensors flared with warnings. A patrol fleet loomed ahead, a wall of firepower that threatened to obliterate them at the slightest provocation. Silas's heart pounded in his chest, the enormity of their task crashing over him like a wave. "Steady," he murmured, his voice a lifeline for the crew. "We can do this." The Black Maria slipped through the patrol's perimeter, skirting the edge of detection. But just as they thought they were clear, a siren blared, the harsh sound reverberating through the ship. "We've been spotted," Jules shouted, her voice laced with panic. "They're hailing us." The comms crackled to life, a voice dripping with malice cutting through the tension. "Human vessel, you are in restricted space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Silas's mind raced, the options dwindling before him. They couldn't fight, and running would only delay the inevitable. "Time for Plan B," he said, his voice grim but resolute. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The ship lurched as Nero pushed the engines to their limits, the Black Maria weaving a frantic path as enemy fire erupted around them. The crew worked in unison, each member a cog in the desperate machine as they danced on the edge of destruction. Explosions rocked the ship, the hull groaning under the assault. Mira dashed through the corridors, tending to the wounded, her hands steady even as chaos reigned. The others fought to keep systems online, every second a battle against the odds. In the eye of the storm, Silas felt the weight of every decision, every life hanging by a thread. But as the ship hurtled toward the archive, a new determination kindled within him. They were outmatched, outgunned, and out of options, but they were not yet defeated. The Black Maria broke through the atmosphere of Norelia Prime, the archive looming ahead like a monolith of inevitability. The mission was suicide, and yet, there was no turning back. The ship descended in a controlled crash, skimming the surface before coming to a shuddering halt. The crew braced for impact, their bodies thrown against restraints as the world tilted and spun. But they were alive, and that was enough. Silas and his team scrambled from the wreckage, moving with purpose through the underbrush toward the archive. The air was thick with tension, each step a potential encounter with cartel forces. They reached the facility under the cover of darkness, their hearts pounding with the enormity of what lay ahead. The defenses were formidable, energy barriers and security drones patrolling the perimeter. But desperation lent them courage, and they pressed on, driven by the flicker of hope that still burned within them. As they breached the outer defenses, the crew worked in harmony, each task a dance of survival. Myra's steady hands deactivated security protocols, while Nero's engineering prowess kept their equipment running against all odds. Jules guided them through the labyrinthine corridors, her instincts honed by a lifetime of evading capture. Despite their efforts, the odds seemed insurmountable. The cartel's presence was everywhere, an omnipresent threat that loomed over their every move. They pressed on, the weight of their mission driving them forward even as the darkness closed in. In the heart of the archive, they found what they had come for, a terminal containing the cartel's darkest secrets, the data that could unravel their empire. But just as hope seemed within reach, disaster struck. An alarm blared, the facility erupting into chaos as security forces descended upon them. The crew fought with everything they had, but the odds were stacked against them, the weight of their predicament crashing down like a tidal wave. In the midst of the battle, Silas found himself face to face with a Voric enforcer, its reptilian eyes gleaming with malice. Their struggle was fierce, a clash of wills as Silas fought for survival with every ounce of strength he possessed. It was Mira who turned the tide, her determination unwavering as she joined the fray, her presence a beacon of hope in the darkness. Together, they overcame their foe, their victory a hard-won triumph in a world of despair. But the battle was far from over. The crew was battered and bruised, their spirits frayed by the relentless assault. Yet, even in the depths of desperation, they found a glimmer of resolve, a determination to see their mission through to the bitter end. As they fled the archive, the data clutched tightly in their grasp, the odds still seemed stacked against them. But the hope that had guided them thus far refused to be extinguished, a flicker of light in the vast, unyielding darkness of space. The blackness of space wrapped around the pirate ship Salvage Queen like a cold embrace, punctuated only by the distant glimmers of distant stars. The ship's engines churned against the deep, a grinding sound reverberating through the hull. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of sweat and the metallic tang of recycled oxygen. Captain Rhea Malone paced the command deck, her boots thudding against the rust-covered floor. "Where's that damn report?" she snapped, her voice a sharp crack echoing against the metal walls. Her second-in-command, Jax, stood hunched over a flickering console, his fingers flying over the keys. "Jammed, Captain. The system's been shot to hell since that last skirmish with the Krellick patrol," Jax replied, his voice a growl of frustration. Rhea cursed under her breath. The Krellick had been dogging them for weeks, their sleek warships cutting through space with brutal efficiency. They were relentless, and each encounter left the Salvage Queen more battered than before. Supplies were dwindling, and tensions among the crew simmered dangerously close to boiling over. "Get it fixed, Jax. We can't afford to fly blind. Not now," Rhea barked, scanning the motley crew around her. They were a ragged bunch, drawn from the dregs of humanity, each with their own scars and secrets. But they were her crew, and she trusted them with her life. "We've got another problem," a voice called from the back of the deck. It was Mira, the ship's engineer, her face streaked with grease and her eyes tired but alert. "Can't be worse than the Krellick breathing down our necks," Rhea said, though her gut told her otherwise. "The reactor, it's on its last legs. We've got maybe 2-3 jumps left before it gives out completely," Mira reported, her voice grim. "Damn it," Rhea muttered. The reactor was the heart of the Salvage Queen *, and without it, they'd be adrift in hostile space. "Options? None that are good," Mira admitted. We need a new core or at least a serious overhaul. And that's not something we can scavenge from Rex. Rhea turned away, her mind racing. The nearest system with a chance of finding reactor parts was Elysium, a bustling hub of trade and corruption. But getting there meant running the Krellic blockade, a risky gambit at best. Plot a course for Elysium, she decided. We'll take our chances with the blockade. Jax nodded, his fingers dancing over the console. Course set, Captain, but it's gonna be tight. Rhea said nothing, staring into the void beyond the viewport. She could feel the weight of their situation pressing down on her, a suffocating blanket of doubt and fear. But beneath it all was a flicker of determination, a stubborn refusal to go down without a fight. As the salvage queen powered up for the jump, the ship shuddered, metal groaning in protest. The crew gripped their stations, bracing against the force of acceleration. Ray's knuckles turned white on the edge of her console, her eyes fixed on the stars streaming past. They burst into real space on the outskirts of the Elysium system, the ship's sensors immediately alerting them to the presence of Krellic patrols. Ray's heart pounded in her chest, adrenaline sharpening her senses. She could almost feel the cold gaze of the Krellic ships, their predatory silhouettes stark against the starfield. Captain, we've got incoming, Jax shouted, his voice rising over the wail of alarms. Rhea didn't hesitate. Evasive maneuvers. Keep us out of their sights. The salvage queen lurched into a dizzying series of twists and turns, the ship's frame protesting with each maneuver. Rhea could hear the distant thrum of the Krellic engines, a haunting reminder of the danger at their heels. Shields are down to 20%. Mira called out, her voice tense. We need to shake them off. Rhea snapped, her mind scrambling for a solution. The Krellic were faster, their ships more advanced, but there had to be a way to outsmart them. Her gaze flicked to the navigation console, a plan forming in the chaos. Jax, feed false data into their systems. Make it look like we're headed for the asteroid belt. Jax grinned, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes. On it, Captain. As the data scrambled the Krellic sensors, the patrol ships veered away, their sleek forms disappearing into the void. The salvage queen slipped away unnoticed, her battered hull streaking toward Elysium. The station loomed ahead, a sprawling web of lights and metal suspended in the darkness. Rhea felt a surge of relief, tempered by the knowledge of what lay ahead. Elysium was a haven for scoundrels and cutthroats, a place where danger lurked in every shadow. As they docked, Rhea gathered her crew, outlining their mission with a steely resolve. We need that reactor core, and we need it fast. Stick together, watch each other's backs, and don't trust anyone. The crew nodded, their faces set with grim determination. They knew the stakes, understood the risks, but Rhea could see the flicker of hope in their eyes, the unyielding spirit that had carried them this far. They disembarked, stepping into the chaotic bustle of Elysium. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of desperation, a cacophony of voices rising around them. Rhea led her crew through the maze of stalls and vendors, her senses on high alert. It wasn't long before they found themselves in front of a rickety shop, its windows cluttered with dusty parts and flickering hollow signs. Inside, the proprietor, a wiry man with a sly grin, eyed them with interest. Looking for something special, he drawled, his gaze lingering on Rhea. We need a reactor core, Rhea said, cutting to the chase. Something that'll keep a ship running. The man's grin widened, revealing crooked teeth. That's a tall order. Not many folks willing to part with one of those, especially for a ship like yours. Rhea met his gaze, her expression unyielding. We can pay. The man shrugged, feigning indifference. I might know someone, but it'll cost you. Rhea nodded, knowing she had little choice. As they haggled over the price, she felt a prickle of unease. This was too easy, too convenient. But desperation drove her forward, each second ticking away like a countdown to disaster. They left the shop with the promise of a reactor core, their pockets lighter but their spirits buoyed by hope. But as they made their way back to the ship, Ray's instincts screamed a warning. She could feel eyes on them, shadows shifting in the corners of her vision. "Captain, we're being followed," Jax murmured, his hand hovering near his blaster. Rey's heart raced, her mind calculating the odds. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not outsmarted. "Keep moving," she ordered, her voice low. "And be ready." The ambush came near the docking bay, a group of rough-looking thugs stepping out of the shadows, weapons drawn. Rey's crew tensed, their hands moving instinctively to their guns. "Looks like you've got something we want," the leader sneered, his voice a grating rasp. Rhea faced him, her expression hard as steel. "We're just passing through. No need for trouble." The man laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Hand over what you bought, and maybe we'll let you walk away." Rhea glanced at her crew, their eyes locked on her, waiting for her signal. She knew they were ready, knew they'd fight to the last breath. But the odds were against them, and she needed another way. Her mind raced, searching for a solution. And then it came, a flash of inspiration, a gamble with everything on the line. "Fine," Rhea said, raising her hands in surrender. "We'll give you what you want." As the thugs relaxed, Rhea moved with lightning speed, her hand darting to her belt. She pulled a small device, a compact EMP generator, and activated it with a flick of her thumb. The device pulsed, a wave of energy rippling through the air. The thugs' weapons fizzled and died, their electronic components fried in an instant. Rey's crew sprang into action, taking advantage of the confusion. The fight was brutal, a whirlwind of fists and blaster fire. Rhea fought with a ferocity born of desperation, her every move calculated to protect her crew. They were outmatched, but not outwitted, their human adaptability and tenacity turning the tide. As the last thug crumpled to the ground, Rhea surveyed the aftermath, her heart pounding with adrenaline. They were battered, bruised, but alive. For now, they had survived. But the victory was short-lived. As they boarded the salvage Queen Asterisk, alarms blared, the ship's systems flashing with urgent warnings. The Krellick had found them, their ships closing in with lethal precision. "Captain, they're locking weapons," Jax shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Rey's mind whirled, calculating their options. They could fight, but with the ship in its current state, it would be a slaughter. They needed another way, a strategy that hadn't been tried. "Prepare for a blind jump," Rhea commanded, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "Are you insane?" Mira yelled, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We could end up in a star. Or we could end up alive," Rhea countered, her gaze unwavering. "Trust me." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, their trust in their captain unshakable. Rhea took a deep breath, her hand poised over the jump controls. This was it, their last chance, a leap into the unknown. As the Krellick closed in, their weapons primed to fire, Rhea slammed her hand down, initiating the jump. The ship shuddered, reality bending around them in a kaleidoscope of light and sound. And then, silence. The salvage Queen emerged into the void, adrift in a sea of stars. They had escaped, but at what cost? The ship's systems were failing, their fate uncertain. Rhea stood on the bridge, her crew gathered around her. They had survived, but the darkness loomed closer than ever, a relentless specter haunting their every step. Their darkest moment yet, and the light of hope flickered dimly, threatening to be snuffed out. But even in the face of despair, Rhea felt the ember of human spirit, a stubborn defiance that refused to be extinguished. Together, they would find a way. They had to. The acrid stench of burning metal and overheated circuitry clung to the air, a choking specter that settled into the throat and refused to be dislodged. The atmosphere within the battered hull of the Asterisk Riptide was oppressive, a weight pressing down with a mix of heat and desperation. Lieutenant Mara Ellis, her face streaked with soot and sweat, crouched low beneath a tangle of exposed wiring, clutching a crude, improvised weapon. A shard of scorched hull plating, its edge honed to a wicked, serrated point. They were deep in the belly of the beast now. The pirate mothership, aptly named Black Star Marauder Asterisk, loomed above the asteroid belt like a malevolent god, its hull a patchwork of stolen technologies and plundered resources. It had seemed like a beacon of hope when they first set out, a chance to strike a decisive blow against their oppressors. But hope, Mara had learned, was a fragile thing, often shattered by the harshness of reality. Around her, the remnants of her crew clung to what little cover they could find. Faces gaunt with exhaustion, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. They were down to a mere dozen, the rest either dead or captured, and the hour was growing late. The pirate forces had proven far more numerous, their defenses more formidable than any of them had anticipated. "Lieutenant," a voice rasped beside her. It was Dickie, the ship's engineer, his skin a patchwork of burns and bruises. "We're pinned down here. We can't hold much longer." She knew it was true. The pirates had been relentless, their understanding of the ship's layout making them ghosts in the shadows, striking hard and fading away before Mara and her crew could muster any semblance of defense. The corridors of the Black Star Marauder were a labyrinth, each turn a potential trap, every shadow a possible death sentence. Yet giving up was not an option. Not now, not ever. Humanity had been cowed and scattered by the pirate lords for too long. This was their chance to show the galaxy that humans would not be broken, that they would not fade into obscurity. "We can't stay here," Mara said, her voice firm despite the quaver of exhaustion that lurked beneath. "We need to keep moving. We find the core, plant the charges, and blow this damned ship to hell." Dickie nodded, his expression grim but resolute. Around them, the rest of the crew murmured their assent, clutching their weapons with white-knuckled grips. They were a ragtag band of survivors, most of them pressed into service by circumstance rather than choice. But in this moment, they were united by a singular purpose, a burning need to strike back against the darkness that had plagued them for so long. The ship groaned around them, a low, ominous sound that echoed through the corridors like the death rattle of some great beast. They had disabled the primary engines, but the ship's secondary systems were still operational, keeping the vessel adrift and functional. But not for long, Mara promised herself. Not if she had anything to say about it. "Let's move," she ordered, pushing herself to her feet. The corridor stretched before them, dimly lit by sporadic flickers of emergency lights. It was a gauntlet, but they had no choice. She took point, her makeshift blade held ready, and the others fell into step behind her, a silent procession of defiance marching into the mouth of oblivion. The journey was a blur of tension and adrenaline, each step fraught with the possibility of ambush. Twice, they encountered pirate patrols, skirmishes erupting in flashes of violence and the crackle of laser fire. Each time, they fought with a ferocity born of desperation, knowing that retreat was not an option. They had no fallback plan, no escape route. This was it, their final stand. Finally, they reached the core chamber, a cavernous space dominated by the pulsing heart of the ship. The reactor loomed before them, a massive construct of alien design, its surface a riot of conduits and control panels. This was the heart of the beast, and they were the dagger poised to strike. "All right," Mara breathed, wiping sweat from her eyes. "Dickie, get those charges set. Everyone else, form up. We're not alone here." Even as she spoke, the shadows seemed to shift, resolving into the figures of pirate soldiers emerging from their concealment. Mara's heart sank, but she did not allow herself the luxury of fear. "Hold them off," she shouted, launching herself into the fray with a fierce battle cry. The fight was brutal, a chaotic melee of flashing blades and searing energy bolts. Mara moved with a deadly grace, her improvised weapon a blur as she parried and struck, each movement fueled by adrenaline and sheer willpower. Around her, her crew fought with similar fervor, their defiance a flame burning bright against the encroaching darkness. Dickie worked furiously, his hands a blur as he planted the charges, fingers dancing over the alien interfaces that controlled the reactor. Time was their enemy now, each second ticking away like a countdown to oblivion. The pirates pressed in, their numbers seemingly endless, their confidence palpable. They believed victory was theirs, that these ragged humans were nothing more than vermin to be exterminated. But they underestimated the human spirit, a mistake that would prove costly. With a final, desperate push, Mara and her crew broke through the pirate lines, creating a momentary reprieve. Dickie finished his work and nodded to Mara, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Charges are set. We need to get out of here." The words were a lifeline, a promise of salvation. But escape was not yet assured. The corridor back was blocked, more pirates flooding in, eager to claim their prize. Mara's mind raced, searching for a way out, a path to survival. Then she saw it, a maintenance hatch, half concealed behind a tangle of conduits. It was a slim chance, but it was all they had. "There," she shouted, pointing. "Through the hatch. Go! Go! Go!" The crew moved as one, a desperate surge toward their only hope of escape. Mara brought up the rear, her blade flashing as she fought to hold the line, buying precious seconds. The pirates were relentless, their overconfidence now tinged with frustration, sensing their prey slipping away. But Mara would not be denied. With a final, defiant swing, she broke free, diving through the hatch after her crew. They scrambled through the narrow passage, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. The hatch slammed shut, sealing them in, and Mara breathed a ragged sigh of relief. They were in the ship's maintenance ducts now, a maze of cramped tunnels and access points that crisscrossed the ship. It was a precarious escape route, but it offered a chance, the only chance they had left. "We need to get to the airlocks," Dickie panted, his voice echoing in the tight confines. "If we can reach them, we can make it back to the asterisk Riptide." Mara nodded, her mind already racing ahead, plotting their course. "Then let's move. We've got to be quick. Those charges will blow any minute now." The crew pressed on, crawling through the ducts with a grim determination. Each turn brought them closer to salvation, every scrape and bruise a testament to their resolve. The ship groaned around them, a low rumble that grew in intensity, the reactor's impending detonation a countdown that beat in time with their racing hearts. Finally, they reached their destination, a small access panel that opened into the airlock chamber. Mara forced it open, peering through to ensure the coast was clear. It was, though for how long, she couldn't say. "All right, let's." Her words were cut off by a sudden, gut-wrenching explosion. The charges had detonated, the ship shuddering violently as the reactor went critical. The force of the blast sent shockwaves through the vessel, a cataclysmic chain reaction tearing through the Black Star Marauder's innards. Mara's heart leapt into her throat, her mind caught between fear and elation. They had done it, crippled the pirate mothership, struck a blow that would echo through the galaxy. But they were not safe yet. "Move," she shouted, urgency lending wings to her words. The crew spilled into the airlock chamber, racing against the clock. The Riptide waited, tethered and ready, but the distance seemed impossibly vast. One by one, they leapt into the void, the cold embrace of space a stark contrast to the fiery chaos left behind. Mara was the last, her heart aching with the weight of her crew's survival. She pushed off, the stars wheeling around her in a dizzying dance, and prayed. The Riptide loomed ahead, a battered but loyal friend, its airlock yawning open to receive them. Mara hit the deck hard, rolling to absorb the impact, and scrambled to her feet. Her crew followed, each one accounted for, their expressions a mix of triumph and disbelief. "We did it," Dickie breathed, his voice awash with awe. Mara nodded, her heart pounding with a fierce pride. "We did," she agreed, her eyes fixed on the viewport, watching as the Black Star Marauder was consumed by fire, its carcass a testament to human tenacity. But even as the ship disintegrated, Mara knew this was only the beginning. The pirates would regroup, their vengeance swift and unyielding. They had struck a blow, but the war was far from over. As the Riptide powered up its systems, preparing for the jump that would carry them away from this battleground, Mara vowed that they would be ready. Humanity had proven that it could stand against the darkness, that it would not go quietly into the night. And as long as there was breath in her lungs, Mara would fight. For her crew, for her people, and for the future that lay beyond the stars. With a final glance at the wreckage of their victory, Mara turned her eyes to the stars and the promise they held. A promise of resurgence, of hope reborn from the ashes. The fight was far from over, but this was not the end. It was merely the dawn of a new beginning. The aft deck of the Asterisk reckless abandon was a mess of wires, oil, and a pungent haze that clung like a desperate lover. Captain Reeves stood at the helm, her eyes as sharp as a freshly honed blade, slicing through the vapor to size up the motley crew she had cobbled together from the dregs of the galaxy's underbelly. Each crew member bore the telltale signs of a life skimming the edge of legality, a patchwork of tattoos, scars, and cybernetic modifications that spoke volumes about battles past and debts unpaid. At the core of the ship, nestled in a tangle of cables that pulsed with electric life, was the heart of the operation. A contraption that had become something of a legend among the human outlaws, the Grav Siphon. It was a mishmash of human engineering and salvaged alien tech, and it hummed with a power that defied its cobbled-together appearance. It was their ace in the hole, their edge against the oppressive weight of the Galactic Syndicate. Reeves swept her gaze over the crew, noting the tension that coiled like a spring in each one of them. They were on the cusp of something monumental, and the air buzzed with the energy of impending change. She felt it deep in her bones, a shiver of destiny that seemed to whisper promises of glory and ruin in equal measure. "All right, listen up," Reeves' voice cut through the din, commanding immediate attention. "We've got one shot at this. The Syndicate doesn't think we have the stones to pull it off. They're underestimating us, and that's their first mistake." Beside her, Ty, the ship's engineer, nodded. His hands were stained with the grease of effort, his eyes flickering with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "The Grav Siphon's ready, Cap. We can draw their power reserves dry if we can get close enough." Reeves smirked, her lips curving into a predator's grin. "Close is what we do best." The plan was simple in its audacity. The Syndicate's flagship, the Imperium Dawn, Asterisk, had docked at the edge of the system, a show of force meant to cow the scattered human colonies into submission. The ship was a leviathan, bristling with weaponry and guarded by a fleet of smaller, equally intimidating vessels. But Reeve knew something they didn't. Humans had a knack for turning desperation into innovation, and they had a wildcard. As the reckless abandon glided through the void, its engines purring in a deceptive lull, Reeves' thoughts drifted to the past. Humanity had clawed its way up from the dirt of its homeworld, had reached out into the stars with a tenacity that was both its greatest strength and its greatest flaw. They were not the oldest race, nor the most advanced, but they were undeniably the most stubborn. And in this wild corner of space, that counted for more than technology or raw power. Approaching the outer perimeter, called out Jax, the pilot, his fingers dancing over the controls with a practiced ease. "Their sensors haven't picked us up yet." Reeve leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the holographic display that projected the looming bulk of the Asterisk Imperium Dawn. "Keep it that way. We're a ghost until we're not." As they closed the distance, the crew fell silent, the only sound the muted thrum of the ship and the soft clatter of weapons being prepped. This was no ragtag band of renegades heading to their doom. This was a crew steeled in the fires of hardship, bound together by a shared defiance against the oppressive order that sought to crush them. "Activate the Grav Siphon," Reeve ordered, her voice a low growl that sent Jax's fingers flying over the console. The machine roared to life, its alien components glowing with an eerie blue light that cast strange shadows across the deck. The air vibrated with the thrum of power, and the ship shuddered as the siphon latched onto the distant behemoth, invisible tendrils of energy snaking through the void to drink greedily from its reserves. Reeve watched as the status indicators blinked, one by one, from red to green. "Let's bleed them dry." On the screen, the Imperium Dawn loomed closer, its lights flickering as the siphon did its work. The Syndicate's flagship was powerful, but even its mighty heart could falter with the right pressure applied in the right place. "Cap, they're onto us." Jax warned, his voice tight with urgency. "The fleet's moving. They're deploying fighters. Hold the course," Reeves snapped. "We've got the surprise on our side." Outside the viewport, the blackness of space was suddenly alive with the chaotic dance of fighter craft, sleek and deadly, glinting in the starlight as they closed in on the reckless abandon. The ship's defenses lit up, filling the void with a storm of fire and fury. Reeves' heart thundered in her chest, adrenaline sharpening her senses to a razor's edge. This was the crucible, the moment where everything hung in the balance. "Target their comms. We can't let them coordinate," she barked, and Ty nodded, his fingers flying over the console. The ship bucked under the assault, warning lights flaring as the shields flared and crackled. But the grav siphon held, drawing power with a relentless hunger that mirrored the crew's determination. The reckless abandon was a small ship, but it was fast and agile, darting through the enemy formation with a grace that belied its patchwork appearance. "They're scrambling," Jax shouted, a fierce grin splitting his face. "Their network's a mess, Cap. They're panicking." Reeves' grin matched his, a feral baring of teeth. She could almost taste the shift in the air, the moment when the tide began to turn. The Syndicate had never faced an opponent quite like this, had never imagined that the humans they sought to subjugate could fight back with such ferocity and cunning. The Imperium Dawn shuddered, its systems faltering as the grav siphon continued to drain its power. Reeve watched as the flagship's lights flickered and dimmed, the great beast brought low by the persistence of a crew who refused to surrender. "We're making history here, people," she called out, her voice carrying the weight of their shared defiance. "Let's give them a reason to remember us." The crew responded with a whoop of triumph, their spirits rising even as the battle raged around them. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with a furious intensity that caught the Syndicate off guard. Across the bridge, Ty was a blur of motion, his mind working in overdrive as he monitored the siphon's output. "We're at max capacity, Cap. We've got enough juice to make a run for it." Reeve hesitated, her instincts warring with the urge to press the advantage. But survival was the priority, and they had given the Syndicate something to think about. "Jax, take us out of here. Let's not overstay our welcome." The reckless abandon peeled away from the flagship, its engines howling as it sped away from the chaos it had wrought. Behind them, the Imperium Dawn was a dark silhouette against the stars, its systems crippled and its crew scrambling to regain control. Reeve leaned back in her seat, her heart still pounding with the thrill of the fight. They had done it. They had struck a blow against the might of the Syndicate and shown them that humanity was not to be underestimated. "This isn't over," she murmured, her eyes fixed on the dwindling form of the flagship. "Not by a long shot." The crew exchanged glances, a new understanding settling over them. They had taken on a giant and lived to tell the tale. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, but they had claimed their place within it with grit and ingenuity. As the reckless abandon slipped into the safety of hyperspace, the crew gathered on the bridge, their faces lit by the glow of the consoles. They were bruised and battered, but they were alive, and with each other, they had forged a bond that was unbreakable. Reeve looked out at the stars streaking past, a fierce pride swelling in her chest. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, their defiance a beacon that would light the way for others to follow. "Let's get some distance," she said, her voice carrying the quiet assurance of a leader who had found her path. "We've shown them what we're capable of. Now, let's make sure they never forget." In the vast expanse of space, the Syndicate would regroup and retaliate, of that there was no doubt. But Reeve and her crew had proven something invaluable, that even the smallest of sparks could ignite a revolution. As the ship moved through the void, its course set for the uncertain future, Reeve knew they were only at the beginning of their journey. There would be more battles, more challenges, but they would face them with the same indomitable spirit that had brought them this far. For now, they had won a precious victory, and the galaxy would never be the same. They were pirates, rebels, and dreamers, and they would carve their names into the stars with fire and fury. The reckless abandon sailed on, a defiant flicker of hope in a universe that had underestimated the strength and resolve of the human spirit. And as Reeve watched the stars stream by, she felt an unshakable certainty that the tide had begun to turn. The Syndicate's dominance was not as unassailable as it seemed, and the humans, with their unyielding will and unbreakable courage, were ready to fight for their place among the stars. The silence of deep space enveloped the battered frigate, the Argonaut Asterisk, as it limped through the asteroid belt. Its hull was scarred from battles long fought, metal twisted and charred like the skin of an ancient warrior. The crew inside, a ragtag collection of humanity's most resilient, clung to their posts amidst the chaos. The ship's captain, Isla Venturi, stood at the helm, her eyes burning with a fierce determination that had become the lifeblood of her crew. The Argonaut was humanity's last defiant streak in a universe that had long since abandoned them. The Tzin Collective, a cold and calculating race of conquerors, had underestimated the resolve of these humans, dismissing them as insignificant. But now, as the Argonaut prepared for its final stand, the Tzin would realize their catastrophic misjudgment. "Status report," Isla barked, her voice cutting through the static of the comms. "Engines are at 30%, Captain," came the reply from Rhea, the chief engineer, her voice tinged with the exhaustion of endless repairs. "We can give you a burst, but it'll be short-lived." Isla nodded, calculating the odds. She knew that each of her crew was a testament to human resilience and ingenuity, a living embodiment of what it meant to fight against overwhelming odds. She turned her gaze to the viewport, where the Tzin mothership loomed, a behemoth of alien engineering, bristling with weapons and shielded by layers of impenetrable armor. "We do this for Earth," Isla declared, her voice steady, her conviction unwavering. "For Earth," echoed the crew, their voices a collective roar of defiance. The plan was audacious, bordering on madness, but it was the only chance they had. Isla knew the Tzin would never expect humans to attack head-on, especially in a crippled ship. But therein lay their strength, the element of surprise and the unyielding spirit of humanity. In the cramped confines of the bridge, Isla's fingers danced over the controls, eyes alight with anticipation. The Argonaut surged forward, engines screaming in protest, a comet of defiance hurtling towards the Tzin mothership. The alien ship responded, unleashing a barrage of plasma fire, the void lighting up with lethal intent. Yet the Argonaut danced through the chaos, weaving a path through the storm of destruction with an agility that belied its size. Isla's crew operated with precision, their movements honed by years of survival on the fringes of space. They were a testament to human excellence, each member an expert in their field, driven by a shared purpose. As the Argonaut closed the distance, Isla activated the ship's cloaking mechanism, a piece of technology salvaged and repurposed from the wreckage of a dozen battles. The ship vanished from sight, a ghost in the void, slipping past the Tzin defenses with a spectral grace. Inside the mothership, the Tzin commanders scrambled, their arrogance giving way to panic. They had never considered that these humans, these primitives, might possess such cunning. The realization hit them like a shockwave. Their prey was not weak, but a predator in disguise. On board the Argonaut Asterisk, Rhea worked furiously, her hands a blur as she rerouted power to the ship's weapon systems. "We've got one shot at this, Captain," she called, her voice filled with a grim determination. Isla nodded, understanding the stakes. She felt the weight of history on her shoulders, the eyes of every fallen comrade watching, willing her to succeed. "Prepare the boarding pods," she ordered. "We're going to hit them where it hurts." The Argonaut reappeared, a specter of vengeance emerging from the void, and launched its payload, a swarm of boarding pods, each carrying a team of human fighters ready to bring the battle to the heart of the Tzin ship. The pods struck with surgical precision, breaching the alien hull and disgorging their human cargo. The corridors of the Tzin mothership became a battleground, the air filled with the staccato rhythm of gunfire and the clash of steel. The Tzin, caught off guard, struggled to mount a defense against the human onslaught. Isla led the charge, her presence a rallying point for her crew, her leadership an unbreakable bond that held them together. The humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation and hope, their tactics a blend of calculated strategy and raw instinct. They moved like shadows, striking and fading, each victory a testament to their indomitable will. The Tzin, once so sure of their superiority, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn, their mighty ship becoming a tomb of their own making. Isla's team pushed towards the ship's core, where the Tzin command center was located. The journey was fraught with danger, every step contested, every inch a battleground. But the humans pressed on, driven by the knowledge that this was their moment, their chance to turn the tide. As they reached the heart of the mothership, the final line of Tzin defense stood between them and victory. The alien warriors were formidable, their armor gleaming, their weapons humming with energy. But the humans were undeterred, their resolve a blazing fire that could not be extinguished. The battle was fierce, a clash of wills as much as weapons. Isla fought with a singular focus, her every move a testament to human tenacity. She could feel the collective effort of her crew, their determination feeding into her own, a symphony of human excellence. Finally, with a decisive strike, Isla breached the command center. The Tzin commander, a towering figure of alien might, stood before her, disbelief etched across its features. It had never imagined that these humans could reach this far, could pose such a threat. "You underestimated us," Isla said, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. The Tzin commander, for all its power, could only watch as the humans seized control, its arrogance shattered by the realization of its own fallibility. With the command center under human control, Isla relayed the signal to the Argonaut. "We've done it," she announced, her voice echoing through the ship. "The Tzin mothership is ours." The cheer that erupted from her crew was a sound that would echo through history, a chorus of triumph and vindication. The Tzin had been defeated, their stranglehold over the galaxy broken by the very people they had dismissed as insignificant. As the humans secured their victory, the Tzin remnants on the mothership surrendered, their defeat complete. The Argonaut asterisk, though battered and bruised, stood victorious, a symbol of human resilience and excellence that would inspire generations to come. In the aftermath, as the dust settled and the stars resumed their silent vigil, Isla and her crew stood together, united by the bonds forged in battle. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their triumph a beacon of hope in a universe that had long since lost its way. This was not just a victory for the Argonaut or its crew, but for all of humanity. In the grimy corridors of a conquered ship, amidst the wreckage of war, humans had proven their worth. The Tzin, for all their might, had learned a harsh lesson: underestimate humanity at your peril. As Isla gazed out into the endless expanse of space, she knew that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast and filled with challenges yet to come, but with the spirit of humanity burning bright, there was no limit to what they could achieve. The Argonaut asterisk, now a harbinger of human resolve, charted a new course. The crew, weary but unbroken, prepared for whatever lay ahead. Together, they would face the future, knowing that in the darkest moments, humanity shone brightest. Thus, in the silent aftermath of battle, as the stars bore witness, humanity claimed its place in the cosmos, a testament to the indomitable spirit that refused to be extinguished. The desolate expanse of the asteroid belt was a graveyard of twisted metal and broken dreams. Derelict ships, remnants of the final battle between the human coalition and the Zelari syndicate, floated silently, their twisted forms a testament to the violence that had swept through this sector like a cosmic storm. The humans had won, a Pyrrhic victory, perhaps, but a victory nonetheless. Captain Elias Drake leaned against the shattered hull of the resolute asterisk, his ship, his home, now a ruin drifting amid the debris. The acrid scent of burnt circuitry lingered in the air, a reminder of the fierce combat that had raged here just days before. His fingers traced the jagged edge of a hole punched through the hull by a plasma torpedo, each scar on the ship a mirror of his own. "You're a stubborn one," Old girl, he muttered, patting the hull with a grim smile. The resolute asterisk, much like humanity, refused to be broken. Around him, his crew worked with the grim efficiency of those who had seen too much death. They were patching up the ship, salvaging what they could from the wreckage. Sasha, his first mate, was directing them, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. She caught his eye and gave a nod, an acknowledgement of survival, of shared purpose in the midst of devastation. The Zelari were gone, their once feared fleet shattered and scattered. For years, they had terrorized this sector, their iron grip crushing any who dared oppose them. But humanity had defied the odds, their ragtag coalition of pirates, smugglers, and outlaws uniting under a single banner to fight back. Elias knew it wasn't just about survival, it was about proving that humanity, even in its darkest hour, could rise above. The Zelari had underestimated them, seeing only a fractured species clinging to the edges of known space. They hadn't counted on humanity's resilience, their capacity to unite against a common enemy. But they had learned, too late, the lesson written in Earth's own history, that humans, when pushed to the brink, could be more fearsome than any alien menace. The communication console crackled to life, drawing Elias from his thoughts. A familiar face appeared on the screen, Admiral Talia Rourke, a key architect of their alliance, her uniform crisp despite the toll of battle. Captain Drake, she began, her voice carrying the weight of command. We've received word from the Council. They're acknowledging our sovereignty over the entire region. The Zelari won't be returning anytime soon. Elias nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle over him. Sovereignty. It was a concept that had seemed laughable, impossible, just months ago. The sector was theirs now, a place where humanity could forge its own destiny, free from the oppressive yoke of the Zelari. But it was a daunting responsibility, one that required more than just victory in battle. It required vision, leadership, and a commitment to something greater than themselves. The Council will want representatives, Talia continued, her gaze steady. You're among those they're considering to lead. Elias raised an eyebrow, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Me, a politician? I think they'd find my methods a bit too unorthodox. Talia chuckled, a rare sound amidst the somber atmosphere. Perhaps, but you've proven your worth in ways that matter. This victory, Elias, it's your legacy. Legacy. The word hung in the air, both a promise and a burden. Elias had never sought glory or recognition. He had simply fought to protect his crew, his people. Yet here he was, standing at the precipice of something monumental. As Talia signed off, Elias turned his gaze to the stars, a sea of possibilities stretching before him. Humanity had been given a second chance, a blank canvas on which to paint their future. The sector would need rebuilding, restructuring, a new order born from the ashes of the old. He thought of the lives lost, the sacrifices made. Each face passed before his mind's eye, a litany of ghosts that would haunt him always. But in their sacrifice lay the seeds of a new beginning. Humanity had faced the darkness and emerged, scarred but unbowed. Nearby, Sasha approached, her expression unreadable. She had been with him through thick and thin, her loyalty unwavering. So, what's next, Captain? She asked, her voice steady. Elias sighed, running a hand through his hair. We rebuild. We honor the fallen by making this sector a place worth living in. A place where our children can thrive without fear. Sasha nodded, her eyes fierce with determination. And the others? The factions? They'll come together, Elias replied, conviction in his words. Out here, we've learned to rely on each other. We've survived because of it. Other factions, once disparate and self-serving, had found common cause in the face of annihilation. In the aftermath, there was a growing recognition that unity was their greatest strength. The pirates, smugglers, and scavengers who had banded together to fight the Zelari were now partners in peace. The lessons learned in battle would guide them as they forged a new society. The Resolute would sail again, but not as a vessel of war. It would become a symbol of hope, of humanity's indomitable spirit. Elias could see it clearly. A flotilla of ships, a coalition of human ingenuity and resolve, carving out a place among the stars. Across the sector, the ripple effects of their victory were already being felt. Stations once dominated by fear were buzzing with life, as humans worked to repair and reclaim what had been taken. The scars of battle would fade, but the bonds forged in the fires of conflict would endure. For those like Elias and Sasha, the fight was far from over. But it was a different kind of struggle now, one of diplomacy, of rebuilding trust and fostering cooperation. It was the kind of fight Elias relished, for it meant crafting a future rather than merely surviving it. As he stood there, contemplating the vastness of space, Elias felt a sense of peace settle over him. The journey had been long and arduous, fraught with peril and heartache. But it had led them here, to this moment of transformation. "Captain," Sasha said, breaking the silence, "whatever happens next, I'm with you." Elias smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest. "I never doubted it for a second." The stars above were a tapestry of possibilities, a reminder of the vast universe that lay beyond. Humanity had staked its claim, not through conquest, but through sheer will and determination. They had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated, that their spirit was unyielding. And as the Resolute powered up, its engines humming with renewed life, Elias knew that humanity's story was far from over. They were just beginning to write the next chapter, one where they would chart their own course among the stars. In the end, it wasn't about the battles won or the enemies defeated. It was about the unity forged in the crucible of war, the enduring legacy of a people who refused to bow to fate. Humanity had proven, once again, that they were here to stay. As the ship set a new course, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of countless souls, Elias Drake looked forward, his gaze fixed on the horizon. A new dawn was rising, and with it, the promise of a future built on the indomitable spirit of humanity. The Resolute surged forward, cutting through the void like a beacon, a testament to the power of hope. Behind it followed a fleet of ships, a coalition of survivors and dreamers, united in purpose. Together, they would carve a new path, lighting the way for those who would follow. In the infinite dance of the cosmos, humanity had found its place. It was a place not given, but earned, a testament to their tenacity and resolve. And as the stars bore witness, Elias knew that this was only the beginning. The universe had been forever changed, and humanity stood ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead.